Thursday morning on Buckeye Breakdown as we get ready for Ohio State and the Indiana Hoosiers. Yesterday, give you a really good idea of what the Hoosier defense looks like and how the Buckeyes should be able to attack them. Today, we're going to flip to the other side of the ball. What in the world does Indiana's offense look like? We know they've decided on a starting quarterback, though they haven't told anybody else. How can their offensive line hold up against an Ohio State defensive line that certainly looks to be a strong point this year? And if they can get the ball to playmakers, who are those guys? What can we expect from them? And what concerns should the Buckeyes have? All that plus a little bit more, some fun stuff after talking to players down at the facility yesterday. It's coming up next on Buckeye Breakdown. We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here.
Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown. Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. It's game week for Ohio State as they get ready to open the season Saturday afternoon against the Indiana Hoosiers. Believe it or not, we are just over 48 hours away from kickoff and finally getting this thing started as the Buckeyes try to go out and win a Big Ten title for the first time in a couple years and come up with that elusive national championship. They seem to have a lot of talent on this team to be able to get it done, but will they play consistently enough on the defensive side? And can the quarterback spot give them enough here early in the season to let you think that those dreams are really tangible? We'll find out. This is the first time you're joining us. Glad to have you. I'm Brendan Gulick, Anthony Moeglin alongside, and we will be live at 7 a.m. Eastern every day talking Ohio State football here during the season. We hope to be your morning stop as you get ready for the Buckeyes and Hoosiers this week. Anthony, I know we've got a game plan today to kind of talk about what this Ohio State defense should look like this week and what we can expect from Indiana's offense. But I got to start with something that's not Ohio State related, if you'll indulge me for a second, because what happened yesterday in the Big Ten was absolutely, without question, one of the coolest things I'd ever seen in my entire life. And if you didn't see it, folks, you got to go back and check out the highlights. The number of the day is 92,003. Nebraska put 92,003 fans in Memorial Stadium to watch a volleyball match. It was the largest crowd for a women's sporting event in world history, and it was awesome.
It just totally electric. Watching it, it was a perfect evening. The weather looked awesome. And how cool is it to just have an entire fan base surrounding a volleyball match? It was the most unbelievable thing that I've really watched in a long time because it's never been seen before. It was just so cool. I couldn't get over just how unique it was, how cool it was, and what an experience for those women to get to play in front of that many people. I got the chills watching it and thinking of it. Like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a sporting event.
Yeah, I mean, it was unsurprising that Nebraska fans will go out and actually support that team. Mm-hmm. If you follow college sports at all, beyond college football, Nebraska volleyball is a big deal, and they literally sell out every single game. So I don't know where the idea came from that they were going to play in the stadium, but honestly, it looked like a rock concert. I mean, it was the smoke screens, the light show, the military flyover. It was actually ridiculously cool. So
the flyover was the one for me. I was watching them like, this is just, I mean, it's a volleyball game in a football stadium, and it was packed. It was so cool. What an awesome idea. Whoever had that idea needs a raise, because that was absolutely fantastic for those women to get to do that and to be on that stage. It literally does not get any better in any stance. You can't get better than what that was last night.
Yeah, there was one international soccer match that had like 91,000 and change, and the largest women's sporting event in the United States prior to that, attendance-wise, was obviously at the Rose Bowl when the U.S. women's national team won the World Cup back in '99. But Just over 92,000 people in Nebraska yesterday. So this is an Ohio State show, and we're going to get to football now, but tip of the hat to the Huskers.
Oh, so cool.
That was very cool.
Even you saying that was compared to the World Cup, the Women's World Cup in '99 in America, and America was in the final. I mean, in Nebraska doubled it up. I mean, so awesome, just so cool.
Well, speaking of doubling it up, I think there is a prevailing thought that Ohio State is just going to run rampant all over this Indiana team, and maybe they will, but maybe they won't. And I tend to believe this game might be slightly tighter, only because there's a lot of youth on both sides of the field.
Mm-hmm.
But Ohio State's guys are substantially better than what I think Indiana's best players are. And if you missed yesterday's show where we focused a little bit more on the Ohio State offense against the Indiana defense, we're going to look at the other side of the ball today. Look, you can't win if you don't score. And I think Ohio State's defense certainly has some interesting spots where they can excel. Why don't we start just, the question that Ohio State fans, I don't know, they're dying to know the answer to, because I'm not sure how many people are like, man, I really care who the Indiana quarterback is. But Tom Allen's trying everything he can to, not give away part of his game plan as best he can. So they've decided who their quarterback is, but they're not making it public. After taking a look at some tape and evaluating some things, what do you think?
Yeah, it's been a very funny thing to watch and listen to as I've just been consuming press conferences and different things from their media. How much of a thing it really is that, hey, they have a guy and they won't tell anybody. And you're trying to get that, even what the smallest competitive advantage they're trying to get. But I do think it plays a little bit, gives Ohio State even if they have to spend 10 extra minutes doing prep for one guy compared to the other. That's well worth the Indiana secretive mystery thing they got going on right now. But the competition is between Taven Jackson and Brennan Sorsby. And we mentioned both of those guys earlier in the week. And after watching some of the Indiana tape from last year, as their OC Walt Bell comes back for his second year, he's going to have a partner, Anthony Tucker, who's a new guy coming in. They're going to co-offensive coordinate the team. Basically, in my opinion, that just means one guy's going to be more involved in the pass game, one guy's going to be more involved in the run game. But it sounds like Walt Bell is going to be calling the shots. But from what they've shown last year, they want to have the quarterback involved in the run game. Every time that they had success, when that was against Ohio State, what limited success they did have, and some of their wins, especially late in the year, the quarterback was involved in the run game. And when you look at these two guys, Taven Jackson, he's an Indiana guy, highly touted coming out of high school. We hit on this earlier in the week, but he's the brother of Trace Jackson Davis, the standout forward for the Indiana Hoosiers basketball team. But he's familiar with the place. He went to Tennessee for his freshman year and had very limited experience. Got in one time, and it was actually against Akron, so it would have been 2 years ago. But got in one time, is 10 yards rushing for one touchdown, and he has 3 or 4 passing for 37 yards. So really no experience with game reps or live bullets. But he's going to be more of your dual threat guy who can throw it and run it. Whereas Brennan Sorsby, he's a 6'3", 230-pound sophomore. And when he was coming out of school, he was ranked the number 13 pocket passer in the country. Very limited stats, came in some relief efforts against Penn State last year, was 3 of 6 for 13 yards. So very little there. But if I was to guess, my lean would be towards Taven Jackson getting the nod, just because they want to have that dual threat guy. And when they're so outmatched as they will be on Saturday, it gives running the quarterback gives you an extra hat and somebody else to account for the defense. So my guess is Taven Jackson may get the nod to start against the Buckeyes on Saturday.
And I like where your head's at there too, because the reality is, as we kind of move toward their offensive line, whoever's playing quarterback, they're going to have to give somebody time, or they're going to have to run plays that don't need time to develop very quickly. It doesn't look like this Indiana offensive line is going to be too much better, at least on paper. It's not looking like they're going to be too much better than they were last year. And and the combination of playing against probably one of the two best defensive lines that they'll see all year right out of the gate, I think it's going to be a tough combination for them.
Right. When you look at their front, their offensive line, their 5 guys that they're going to roll out there, it was really cool to learn. And I guess not cool for them, but they're the 10th youngest offensive line in the country. They'll have a combined 77 starts when they walk out on the field. So across 5 guys, they've only had 77 starts throughout their entire careers. And it's led by their right tackle. We got a redshirt senior, Matthew Bedford. He's a big dude, big drink of water, 6'6", 308 pounds. He's led it for all 4 years, but he's even coming off an injury last year that cost him half his season. So he'll be a guy who's, although veteran, it's been a while since he's had a meaningful snap. However, when he has played, he's been fantastic. His junior season and 475 snaps against pass blocking snaps. He only gave up 20 pressures, gave him a 97.6 win rate through Pro Football Focus. And that's pretty great. That's elite. That's elite work right there, especially in the Big Ten where you're facing dudes every week. So he's going to be the guy that you look at. And then from there, it's a lot of question marks. They're at guard on the right side, Khalil Benson, torn ACL in 2020, redshirted in 2021. So last year was really his first year and didn't really have too much action. Zach Carpenter, he's going to be in his 3rd year playing at the center position. He initially transferred from Michigan his first season, but very limited experience at IU. And then on the left side, left guard, you got a redshirt sophomore, Mike Caddick, 6'4", 312. Has played his whole career at IU, but has no game experience. And then at left tackle, you're getting a TCU transfer. So this will be his first year playing in Bloomington, 6'5", 300-pound Noah Boltoff. And he was on the national championship team at TCU last year. So all of these guys are new, although some of them have been at IU for a while. They haven't really played much or had much experience outside of Matthew Bedford at right tackle.
So given that Matthew Bedford is their best offensive lineman, what kind of looks can Ohio State's defensive line, throw at him and try to run away from him in order to put pressure on?
Right. Yeah. To do that, just to be successful, it's very simple on the defensive side. You just take your other guy, you take your best player, and you put him on the other side. So JT, expect him to go against the left tackle. Expect him to go against Noah Boltoff. Now, you flip on the other side. Noah's seen some stuff. I mean, he was on a national championship contending team last year, and he played against Michigan and whatnot. So he's no walk in the park. But when you want to give your guys the best option to win, just flip them sides. Or add some pressure on to the outside so that when they're accounting for when the tackles have to account for the second level based on their slide protection or what side they're manned up, you can get them to have to account for someone who's not your premier pass rusher. So look to them when they want to bring pressure. They'll bring it at Bedford on the right side. But if they want to just rush 4, look for their guys to be flipped over on the left side of the offensive line where they're going to have a little bit more of an advantage.
Tell you what, it's easy to get excited to go watch somebody like JT Tuimoloau or Jack Sawyer, maybe even Kenyatta Jackson. We've learned this week that Arvell Reese, the freshman from Glenville, was obviously a really good linebacker in high school. He's been really impressive and is going to play on Saturday. And Jim Knowles alluded to the fact that he's probably more defensive end type just because of how aggressive he is. For as excited as I am to watch those guys, honestly, I really can't wait to watch Tyleik Williams and Mike Hall in the middle, because when those two guys are healthy, I feel like Ohio State's got a stout middle of the defensive line. And I want to see them really get after it. You certainly saw last year in the opener what Mike Hall was capable of against Notre Dame, and unfortunately just dealt with an injury all year. But man, that kid is he's on the verge of something really cool. I'm excited to watch Mike Hall.
And they're going to be an integral part, and you'll see it starting this week. But Coach Bell was talking yesterday or at his press conference how they want to be able to establish the run. So they're kind of fighting an uphill battle with young quarterbacks. We've talked about it on our side, but flip it over to their side of things, and then multiply the pressure by 1,000,000 because the Ohio State defense is so elite and so good. He even made a comment. He goes, all right, it was to the reporter, and because the question was in reference to like what's making you lose sleep, and he goes, look at their roster and tell me what guy doesn't have a chance to play in the NFL, from a personnel perspective. So they're fighting an uphill battle to begin with, and he kept referencing wanting to be ahead of the sticks. And what does that mean? That means not having second and long. That means your goal on 1st and 10 is to go positive. You want to have 2nd and 7 and less. And then on 3rd down or on 2nd down, you want to get half. So if it's 2nd and 8, you want to at least get 4 yards, right? So you have 3rd and manageable. So to do that, you want to be able to establish the run. Now, how Ohio State takes that away, you just have a stout interior, what makes it really, really challenging for the guards and the tackles and the center to get where they need to go, to get to the second level. And when you got a guy like Mike Hall who just wreaks havoc inside, makes it really challenging to run the football and to keep that offense on schedule. And then everything snowballs from there. When you have a freshman quarterback who's never played in 3rd and 12, that's going to cause problems for the Indiana offense. So it all starts in the middle, and I think Ohio State has such an advantage up front, especially from a personnel perspective and then from an experience perspective, as this IU offensive line is so inexperienced. I think could be something that Ohio State takes advantage of.
All right, let's jump into some of the skill position players. I know if IU is going to start putting anything together, probably going to mean that Jalen Lucas is at the focal point of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, number 12 for IU, and you'll see him everywhere. He led their team in all-purpose yards with 996 last year, had about 280 yards rushing, only about 96 receiving, but he had 570 yards in the return game, which were huge, huge plays. He had 3 touchdowns over 70 yards last season. And if you go back to some of our conversations earlier in the week and even some prior, Ohio State's big, circled on their board every week, is big plays. Eliminate the big play. And that isn't, we talked about it on Monday, that isn't just in the first half of the game or second. That's throughout the entirety of the game. Like, this game has to look the part because you're preparing for the games to follow. You can't afford to have any slip-ups. And Jalen Lucas is the guy that can do that. He can turn a 2-yard run into an 80-yard touchdown just like that. He's going to be the fastest guy on the field on Saturday afternoon. He's real little, 5'9", 170 pounds. So if you get your hands on him, he's going down. But the problem is getting your hands on him. So he'll be the focal point of their offense. And then he's supplemented by a bunch of guys that I think are quality skill guys, starting in the backfield with Josh Henderson. He's going to wear number 26. And he's really their bell cow. He's going to be the guy who gets potentially 20 carries, and they're going to rely on to keep Indiana's offense in rhythm throughout the entirety of the game. Had 8 touchdowns last year, 4 in the air, 4 on the ground, so can do kind of a little bit of both. But expect him to be the guy who's giving you 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That type of guy. And then lastly, a new guy, Christian Turner, transfer from Wake Forest. He's doing the college tour. Started his first 3 years at Michigan. Was pretty successful there. Accumulated 13 touchdowns in his time as a Wolverine. Transferred to Wake Forest. Had 1,022 yards in his career there and 12 touchdowns. And then he's going to be his first year here at IU. So there's your backfield. And Jalen Lucas is technically a running back, but Coach Bell called him his move-around toy yesterday. So he's going to be your adjuster. So he'll be in the backfield. He'll also be in the slots. They may even put him on the outside when they're trying to get him the ball. But they referenced a bunch. Get Jalen Lucas the football. That's the main focus of their offense. And get him the football meaningfully. Don't just hand it off to him and just say, hey, go make a play. Like, just scheme it up for him and try to get him in space to make big plays.
How about if they try to get the ball in the air, if they can't get it to Lucas in the backfield? What's the receiver group look like?
Yeah, it's number 6. It's Cam Camper. He's the guy to keep your eye on. He's been really their best guy. He had a season-ending injury last year, but he's a guy that in his debut last season is at Indiana. He's just was a transfer in last year. Had 156 yards against Illinois and set the record for a first time or for a debut performance. So he's got that big play capability to him. Stands at 6'2", 195 pounds, so a bigger guy. And one of the consistent themes of their wide receiver room is they only have one guy under 6 foot. And that's going to be their slot guy, Cameron Perry, He's little. He's 5'9", 165, but he's got a lot of juice to him, and he's a guy that they'll adjust with him too. Him and Jalen Lucas kind of remind me of each other, where they're both very shifty, good hands, and good explosion. So you'll see him in the slot, and then some other guys. Donovan McCauley, 6'5", 200 pounds, was a former quarterback. So he actually last spring was a quarterback for IU. Knew he wasn't going to make it happen, but they were like, hey, we have to use you. You're huge and you got great athletic ability. Let's put you at wide receiver. He actually caught a touchdown last year against Ohio State, so has had some experience in big games. Doesn't have many stats outside of that, but has been playing receiver now for a year for IU. On the last two guys, we have two transfers to keep your eye out for. And this first guy, Dekias Carter, is a guy that you should circle. He's going to wear number 4, stands at 6 foot, 200 pounds. It was a transfer from Fordham, right? So he's a smaller level D1 guy, but was incredibly productive in his career. Had 39 career starts, had over 3,000 receiving yards and 31 touchdowns on 176 receptions in his career at Fordham. So he's going to be a guy that they're going to look to have on the outside and really supplement Cam Camper and Jalen Lucas as well. And then lastly, EJ Williams Jr., a Clemson transfer, 4 years at Clemson. Doesn't have too many stats, but had his career game against Ohio State in the 2021 Sugar Bowl in the playoffs. Had 5 catches. That was his career high, but not much, but has had some experience in big games and can be a guy they look to on the outside.
So this is kind of a combo question here, talking both tight ends and just personnel packages in general. When you're an offense where you look at a defense to Walt's perspective earlier on, like, hey, which guy over there isn't going to be an NFL player? Let me know if you find him.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element of like, you got to have numbers, right? If you've got a numerical disadvantage, it's probably going to be difficult against Ohio State anyways. So do you put more guys in the box because you're trying to run the ball? Do you want to spread everybody out so that you have as few Ohio State players in the box as possible and try to pick them apart through the air? What do you think they try to do if things go exactly the way they want it to go?
Yeah, if this was a game where Indiana had the advantage and they were able to dictate everything, you would see them in a lot of 10 personnel, which is 4 receivers, no tight ends, and 1 running back to create space. They need space. Jalen Lucas needs space. Josh Henderson, maybe not so much from the space perspective, but they would love to create space, very similar to how Ohio State operates their offense. However, when you're at a disadvantage, which they will be on Saturday, they're going to have to adjust. So you're going to see some tight end work. You're going to get into 11 personnel, which is 1 running back and 1 tight end, maybe leaving a little bit of 12 because in 12 personnel is 1 running back and 2 tight ends. Because, like they said, they want to establish the run. And when they had success last year, they were having to bring a tight end in to create an extra gap in the run game. And then that allows them to use their quarterback in the run game. So where they would be ideal is 4 receivers, no tight ends. However, I think you're going to roll out a couple tight ends here. Their tight ends have little to no experience. You're going to have 3 guys. James Bamba is going to lead the way. These are all huge guys. These are like tackle extensions. James Bamba is going to wear number 48, 6'6", 250. He had his first career start last season against Ohio State. Aaron Steinfeld, 6'5", 250. Caught 1 touchdown last year against Maryland. And then Bradley Archer, 6'3", 245. He's a transfer from Stanford. So all of them have very little stats. They're huge guys, and they're extra hats in the run game because I think that it's going to be important if Indiana even wants to try to stick in it on offense. They have to be able to run the ball a little bit and just stay alive until Jalen Lucas breaks one. Just like stay alive on a drive, and you'll see them have to adjust what they want to do to get into to advantageous situations.
I know we talked a little bit about the Buckeye defensive line, and maybe the answer to this question is somebody we mentioned already, but what Buckeye defensive player are you most looking forward to watching Saturday because you think they're primed for a huge game?
Yeah, so the easy answer is Tommy Eichenberg. I'll give 2. Coach Bell said, or Coach Bell, said that Tommy's going to be the best linebacker they face in not only the Big Ten. He goes, this might be the best linebacker in the country. He's a Ignatius guy. He's a Wildcat just like yourself. So he's from the Cleveland area, which you and I are both very familiar with. So it'll be cool. It's cool to watch him play, but it was also cool to hear their offensive coordinator really single him out as, hey, they're loaded everywhere, but it doesn't go unless 35 goes. So it'll be really cool to watch him play and know that they're game planning against him because he's seen so much football. So it'll be fun to watch him. And then we talked about it earlier in the week, Sonny Styles on the back end. He's the guy that I have circled because of the hype that's been surrounding him. And I'm just excited to see what he does. I'm excited to see how Jim Knowles uses him. How are you going to – he's an athletic guy. He's a freaky dude who can play over the top. He can play in the post and keep everything in front of him. But he also looks like he can play in the box and be a physical dude to stop the run. So I'm excited to watch him play and see just how he's adjusted, how he's used in this Jim Knowles defense. It should be a lot of fun to watch those two guys.
Fun little sidebar since we brought up his name a few different times. Offensive coordinator Walt Bell for Indiana. They've got a relatively young coaching staff, guys that are experienced, but they're in their late 30s, early 40s. A lot of their staff. I learned yesterday that Walt Bell's college roommate was country music superstar Sam Hunt, and I guess they're still pretty good buddies. I love Sam Hunt's music, so that's cool.
Hey, that's so cool. And also, if you have a free 5 minutes, just cut on his interview and don't watch it, and you'll hear Matthew McConaughey. I had it on in the car, and I turned it on. I'm like, holy cow! I'm watching a Matthew McConaughey film. I had to double check to make sure I wasn't going to get a all right coming from him. He's just a slow Southern drawl, but he seems to have been pretty successful, and he's very excited about the opportunity to go against Jim Knowles too. He mentioned that he really respects Jim Knowles, and they actually go back a while when Jim Knowles was the DC at Duke. Coach Bell was at North Carolina, so they had some head-to-head battles going back a while, and he really respects Jim Knowles and his career to this point. And it'll be fun. I know it'll be a fun little chess match. I'm very curious to see what they have up their sleeve on offense because they are severely outmanned. Ohio State has an incredible advantage on the defensive side of the ball, and Indiana's going to have to get pretty creative to survive on Saturday. So that's going to lead to a lot of wrinkles and a lot of cool stuff that I'm excited to see.
A lot of comments flying in left and right on our YouTube channel. If you're watching live with us, if you're listening after the fact, please know that we do these shows live every morning at 7 a.m. to kind of get you started for the day. So you can certainly interact with us live. We get some questions along the way. Jeff, appreciate the compliment. We've got a question here. It says, what do you think about backups for linebacker? And I'm sure they're referencing Ohio State at linebacker. So let's dive into that for a second. Obviously, Tommy Eichenberg's going to get a whole lot of love here. Personally, my attention is pretty heavily on CJ Hicks this year. I want to see what CJ can do.
Yeah, CJ Hicks is really a name that stands out for when you're talking about depth at the linebacker position. And I think this is a really good question, Spider, because Tommy's going to go. This is Tommy's last year at it. We've watched him play and grow and become one of the best linebackers in the country. It'll be really cool to see who fills in afterwards. And they're going to start getting a lot of experience, especially early on in these games, testing guys to put them in there. So I agree. It'll be good to see, some of the depth at the linebacker position, kind of as we get this season kicked off here.
I like Steel Chambers. I'm excited for him to play. Who else is going to stand out, I think, is one of my favorite questions, frankly, at the beginning of the year to figure out who else is there. But, I'll put it to you this way. I don't think linebacker is going to be a problem for Ohio State. And I'm hopeful that there are enough situations where Tommy doesn't have to play, late into the third and early in the fourth quarter, especially these first few games. I don't love predicting blowouts. I feel like that's kind of it's a hard thing to do. I mean, Ohio State is explosive enough that the game certainly could get out of hand, right? I mean, this could be a 21-0 game at the end of the first quarter, certainly. But it's also the first game of the year, and the first half of the first game against Notre Dame last year and against Minnesota the year before were a little clunky. right? So I don't know that I expect Ohio State to be, 5 touchdown first half kind of team on Saturday. I think that might be a little aggressive in terms of my mentality. So I don't know how much depth you're going to see on the defensive side early in the game, but I'm certainly hopeful that they're going to play some depth early and we can start to see what some of these guys have.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the predicting a blowout. I'm the worst when it comes to that. So anytime I say, hey, it's going to be a blowout, it's going to be a tight one. And if I say it's going to be a tight one, Ohio State will be up 35-0 in the first quarter. And it doesn't, there's no other way than that. Yeah, it'll be, you're just curious to see how it starts. It's been 2 straight years where it hasn't looked great in week 1, at least in the first half of week 1. But Ohio State's come out with the win. Again, you want it to look okay. You want it to look good, but at the end of the day, get a win. Go there, get the win, which I think Ohio State's in prime position to do.
All right, let's wrap with something else that was a little fun. We heard from Coach Meyer yesterday. Urban Meyer was asked, who were the 5 hardest players to prepare for when you were coaching at Ohio State? And I think this is a fun little list. I know you're a big college football fan in general. I'm interested if there's anybody else totally off the top of your head, but I'm interested if there's anybody else that you think, should be added to a list like this. I couldn't come up with anybody off the top of my head, but Coach Meyer said the 5 hardest players for him to prepare for: number 5, Donovan Peoples-Jones at Michigan; number 4, Denard Robinson at Michigan; number 3, Trace McSorley at Penn State; number 2, Melvin Gordon at Wisconsin; and the number 1 hardest player for him to prep for was Saquon Barkley at Penn State. Obviously some pretty talented dudes there.
That's a good list. I know the stories. I'm a big Browns fan, so the DPJ Ohio State stories are ones that I know well. It was Urban Meyer wanted DPJ really, really bad coming out of high school, and so it's really interesting to hear him say that he was one of the harder guys to prepare for. I wish Urban would have turned the clock back a little bit to his days at Florida and Utah, because I'd have been interested to hear, in those early days at Florida, who some of the guys were. But, I think that's a pretty good list. I mean, that's really Saquon Barkley. I don't know if I remember just that game in Columbus. I remember watching it because I had just played a game and we were in the press box. You actually may have been there. I don't remember if you were or not, but I remember being in a press conference very similar to this, watching the game on the thing and watching Saquon take the opening kickoff back and be like, Penn State's in it. And then Ohio State had that huge fourth quarter comeback. Yeah, it's a pretty darn good list. Off the top of my head, I don't know what I would add to it, especially from the Big Ten. But, that's really tough. Denard Robinson was awesome. And Saquon Barkley's one that, probably kept him up at night.
Yeah. And I mean, look, there's obviously it's 2 Michigan guys and 2 Penn State guys on that list, probably because you look at the schedule and you play those teams more regularly. It's not like Wisconsin was guaranteed to be on the schedule every year, but Gordon was obviously a hell of a running back too. But admittedly, nobody stands out to me more than Saquon Barkley in probably the last 15 years. Whenever Ohio State would play Penn State when he was in the backfield, it's like, okay, let's see what we got here. Because you knew he was pretty special. So anyways, I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah, it was cool. Just when Saquon gets the ball, hold on for dear life, man, because he can do everything. He was fun to watch. Great college player, great pro player too.
One last quick question here. Who do you expect to be the returner for punts and kickoffs? I would anticipate that Emeka Egbuka is going to continue to take a lot of those. I don't know that he'll be the only one, but I would be surprised if he's not back there on Saturday for the first punt return. I'm interested to see if they're going to use Chip Trayanum. They've done it in the past. When Chip Trayanum gets going full steam ahead, he is as hard to tackle as anybody on the team. I think he's one of the 3 strongest guys in the whole roster. He's got pretty darn good speed, and he is an incredibly downhill runner. I didn't know if I liked watching him better as a linebacker or a running back. But when he got opportunities, I even remember watching him back in high school when he played at Archbishop Hoban in Akron. He was a totally different animal. I love the idea of getting him opportunities on special teams. So I'm hopeful that he'll be back there, but I anticipate that Emeka Egbuka is certainly going to be someone to take a lion's share of those opportunities.
Quick side note on Chip. I was a coach at Walsh Jesuit when he was in high school at Hoban, so I got to actually go against him. And in high school, it was always so funny, from even going back to when I played. The D1 guys, and especially the high D1 guys, just were so much better than everybody on the field at all levels. I played against DeMonte Thomas when I was in high school. He played at Michigan. And when they step on the field, it's just like, it doesn't even matter. They just run by everybody. And Chip was the same way. So fan of Chip's and hopeful to see him. I'm excited to watch him play and see what he can contribute to the Buckeyes this year.
All right. That'll wrap up our Thursday edition of Buckeye Breakdown. Tomorrow we're going to go more game preview, a little bit wider scope, and give you a little idea of how we expect this thing to go. We're going to talk about a couple of individual notes on this team that the Buckeyes are going to put out there for the first time this year, and we might touch on a couple of other storylines around the Big Ten to get you set up for the weekend. So looking forward to Friday morning show. We will continue to do these each morning all year long. So hopefully this has been fun for you and informative. Love to try to give you as good an idea as you can of what to expect when Ohio State takes the field. For Anthony Moeglin, I'm Brendan Gulick. Thanks for hanging out with us. Please check out all the work that our team does over at BuckeyesNow.com. We're part of the Sports Illustrated Media Group in the Fan Nation Network, Buckeyes Now, on Twitter, on Instagram. Is it Twitter or X anymore? I don't even know. I still
all the same.
Yeah, whatever it is. It's at BuckeyesNow_FN. Again, part of Fan Nation there, and you can find us both on Twitter as well. We're pretty active there on social media. And certainly, if you're listening after the fact or you didn't catch the beginning of the show, you can rewind it afterward or find it wherever you like to find your favorite podcast. But in the meantime, Buckeyes are about 48 hours away from kicking off the season, and we will be in Bloomington to get you ready on Saturday. Have a great day, guys.